It is my great honor to present in this conference, and I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me. I'm not a orthopedic surgeon or doctors. I'm a physical therapist. So the thing that we do in some the testing for the functional test. Of course, this is the functional test is just part of another test, not the whole thing that can be criteria that using for the return to sport. So my talk will be related to the selected functional tests and some of literature that I'll probably update in the last couple of years that they're doing the biomedical testing related to the functional test. And then I would present the first functional test literature. I'll probably go back and forth. But for the paradigm, that is going to be new things that recently they try to add the new paradigm for the testing, such as cognitive loading during the functional test, so that I will be presenting that also. Okay. I think everyone probably have seen this before, the strategic assessment of risk and risk tolerance framework. So it consists of 3 steps. The first step is assessment of health risk. Second step is assessment of activity risk. So those two are the medical factor and sport risk modifiers. And then the last one, the step 3, is assessment of risk tolerance. So if you have activity risk is greater than tolerance, that maybe it's not the decision to return to pay yet. And if we look at the sport risk modifier, functional test is part of that step 2 or sport risk modifiers. When we talk about the return to play or return to sport, so we might need to consider the return to sport continuum. We probably divide that into for the return to participation, return to sport, return to performance. So separate that, but all this, if we can look at this, is also use the criterion-based evaluation. And then when we're looking on that, we probably see the structure plan with the serials of evaluation as progression occur from practice to competition and performance for the return to sport and return to performance. So in this continuum, we will have the rehabilitation occurs throughout. In the first World Congress in Sport Physical Therapists, this is published in IJSPT. For the 2016, they have the consensus statement for the general recommendation for return to sports. So the first one is probably use a group of tests, aka as a test battery, and also try to choose open tasks, which is less control over closed tasks, more control when possible. And try to include tests with reactive decision-making elements that is add that into the testing for functional tests. Assess psychological readiness to return to sport, which is my colleague Andrew will talk after in this session later on. And also try to monitor workload throughout the return to sport transition. And then Alvarez just published in the International Sport Physical Therapist in 2021. We already have the intrinsic factor that may lead to the injury for the return to sport. Also, we establish extrinsic criterion for the use to assess return to sport. So we probably look at the range of motion, either hip, knee, and ankle. Strength, we can use the isokinetic testing, time to peak torque or peak torque, but that's not focusing on my talk. My focus of this presentation will be related to neuromuscular control. We have the functional movement screen, FMS, wide balance test, single leg squat, tuck jump assessment, leg score, landing error scoring system. I'll probably go through this real quick after this. And then the hop power test for the hop battery test, single hop, triple hop, things like that. And agility and cutting change of direction, for example, such as cutting movement assessment score, or it's called CMAS, or LEFT, which I will show you later. And the psychological readiness, of course, that's going to be Andrew's job for explain more on that. Okay. For the criterion for foundation movement, the test, for example, like the range of motion, friction on the knee should be symmetrical to contralateral leg. And then for the coast kinetic chain ankle dorsiflexion, should be greater than 35 degrees for tibial sharp ankle. And FMS, they don't have the good criterion for when it's returned, but in general, they said it's greater than 14. That's probably gonna lead to injuries. And single leg squat is probably greater than 5 degrees of valgus, or single leg squat test, no errors on that. So I'll go to this test real quick. You've probably seen this before. Functional movement screen, they consist of those 7 posture looking at deep squat, hurdle step, inline lunge, shoulder mobility, active state leg raise, tongue stability push up, and rotary stability. So they score 0 is no pain, 0 is pain, and there is no performance, so they cannot perform anything, but 3 is performed as directed. So the total score is 21. Why balance test? They're doing testing the balance on those, and then we're looking at those and get into the anterior direction, postural medial direction, or postural lateral direction, and then combine looking at the distance, and then average it for each distance, and then we can do composite score by combine those and divide it by 3, and then time the leg length, and then time 100 to make it 100%. So in the criterion, sometimes they use it 90% or 95% for the return to play. Single leg squat, there is different ways to define that. Some people are doing without hands, so it's kind of moving, and they call it qualitative analysis of single leg squat. They giving the criteria score on that to base on those squatting. Some people doing single leg squat grading criteria, looking at if the lateral trunk lean. Those are similar for when looking at those how they define the movement. Pelvic tilt, hip adduction or internal rotation, dynamic knee valgus, and then loss of balance. In this test, they use the hands in front and then doing the single leg squat. Sometimes they're looking at the angle in the frontal planes. This is another doing research, and then they try to control the hands. So they use the hands on the hip. So you can see the variety of the test. Make sure that you use the same test when you do the functional test on those. And then jumping mechanics, we can use the tuck jump assessment. So the errors is if it's greater than 3, that may be that potential for the injury again. And then landing error scoring system, which is greater than 5, based on the full items of those less score. Okay. So let's go to the first one, tuck jump assessment. So tuck jump assessment consists of those continuing doing the tuck jump. This is one of my former students, but he's also now in the CLAT orthopedics biomedics laboratory motion analysis. So what we're looking at, knee and thigh motion, foot position during landing, and parametric techniques, which is a lot of sports side doing. If they're coming down, they should jump immediately or quickly, not pausing between those. If they pause it, then we probably check on that. So what we're looking at is, see, some people put the tape about 35 centimeters, see how they're coming down, look at the knee position, and is it the feet is too narrow, or the thigh is from frontal plane is not equally, and then maybe they have the narrow coming down also on the sagittal plane as well. So that's the criterion that they can use for the tuck jump assessment. Landing error scoring system, the full score is 70 items, but now they have the one that can be used in clinic. They reduce it from 17 to 10 items. So basically, they jump off the box about 30 centimeters. This distance of the box from the landing is about half of the participant height, or at least height, 50% of that. And then after they coming down, they have to jump immediately quickly on the verticals. And then we're looking on both sagittal plane and frontal plane, looking at those where the initial contact, how the knee is, the base of support of the knees, how the trunk angle is, something like that. So the score can be greater than 6 is poor, so they have the bad technique for the landing. I did this research a long time ago on published in the Data in Brief. This one is just doing the test on the landing error scoring system in the children 10 to 13 volleyball. That time we test about 200 people and look at all those the poor score on the female the girls, and then the red one, and then the yellow one is like moderate, like almost over the half for the girls, and then almost 50% for the boys. So maybe that's when looking at this, the technique on the landing for the children's or the boys and girls, and when they're doing the coach or the teacher that didn't teach them fundamental technique, so that maybe lead to the error injury in the future as well. And they also have the developed, since a lot of sport is not the bilateral landing, so that's why the single legs is become more and more interesting. So they develop some of single leg leg score, but then this is still some people use the 30 centimeters, but one of the literature using 20 centimeters box, and then they have reduced the distance from jumping from 50% of the height of the athletes or the participant or tester to 25%, and then the score for the single legs is coming down to 11. Now there are a lot of researcher groups that try to do this single leg scores, develop or modify this. Okay. For this test, so there's a paper come out in 2021. They're testing the standard return to sport criterion for the FMS wide balance test and tuck jump in footballers following ACL. They test 65 males divided in 3 groups. So the ACL group has like 2 or 3 years before the study. So that's passing the return to sport criteria based on the doctors, orthopedic doctor, and all those physical therapists and team sport. And then the my injury group consists of those my strength grade 1 of the muscle, and then control is no injury. So what they found out is the FMS did not significant difference between the groups, but except the wide balance test and tuck jump assessment. One of the good thing about tuck jump assessment, because they're doing continuing consecutive jumps, so that maybe lead to the fatigue. So they test the tester or the athletes during the fatigue as well, and they'll also do the plyometric test. Now, this one is one of the main that I think maybe a lot of people using it. For the testing the battery of the hop test, for example, single leg hop, triple jump hop, triple crossover hop, or 6 meter time hop. So what's the cut off the score? So mostly they're using 90% of LSI limb symmetry index, right? So that's in one of the score that they try to use it, and then for that return to play. Okay. So recently in 2022, there is the group of the Aspita physio and then doctors then doing the testing in biomechanics lab. So the first paper they come out is single leg hop for distance symmetry. So this single leg hop, because when we're looking at a single leg hop, we're just measuring the distance, horizontal distance. So they divided into 2 groups. So one group is the ACL group that's already back to the testing. So all the tests is, they also do ICDC, ACL, RSI, but looking at the single leg hop distance, LSI is 97%, and then triple hop distance is 97% compared to the control group, and involved and uninvolved legs. So standard motion analysis lab, they use 12 Vicon cameras, EMG analysis system, force plate. I wasn't going to be on details on that things. But what happened is single leg hop is going to be proportion. And when they land, so when they land, the green line is knee joint. And then this is the proportion on the top one is proportion phase. And then landing phase on the bottom one. If we're looking at that, is gonna see the first row is the involved, which is ACLR group. So the second one is the uninvolved, and then the last one is the control. So the landing is demand more on the knee joint that doing on when they're landing on that. Okay, and looking at the contribution, so we can see that a lot of knee can be compensated during landing. So in the involved group or ACLR group, they use the hip more than other. So that means that when we measuring the distance, horizontal distance for the single leg hop, that may not working on can tell more specifically on the knees. So that's one application. So they rest that the hop distance asymmetric of knee function need reappraisal. Symmetry in the tip and hop is the same thing. Very similar. They use the 5-force plate and looking at the proportion phase, and then this is the first rebound, second rebound, and final landing. Because the final landing is going to be more absorption, which is more eccentric loading. So they calculate the joint power and the workload. Similarly to the single leg hops distance, so they found that the symmetry is for the knee doesn't work all on that. So basically, the hip is helping during the compensation. So the distance may be similar on those, not over 90% of LSI. But when we're looking at biomechanically, so the knee is doesn't do the job more as a hip during the involved group. So they proposed the single leg vertical jump instead. So in the single leg vertical jump will consist of based on the what sometimes they call single leg counter movement jump, and then the single leg drop jump, which is drop from the 30 centimeter box. It's very similarly same concept. But in this, they found out the knee is contribute more as compared to the horizontal jump. So if we're looking at both propulsion phase, propulsion phase and gyration phase, which is concentric phase. So they demand the knees to do the job to work more on those joint work contribution. Okay, so they propose that single leg vertical jump is maybe can be used in the clinic to determine the jump height difference better than single hop, because they require the knee more to work more on that work. CMAS and left score, there is no clear cut on that. So the cutting movement assessment score is very specialized for football, or other sport. So sometimes we need to do that as well. We can do is 45 degrees, 70 degrees, or 90 degree cuts on that. And they have the criteria to score it. So there is no clear cut on that. Here is some of the example. You can go to the website and looking at all those, how they criterion or give the score on this as well. And training recommendation as well that they have on the papers that came out. Lower extremity functional test. This is very difficult to do it, but they will use in basketball. In the US, they're doing a lot of things. They require the agility test, forward run, retro run, side shuffle, karaoke, figure 8 runs, 45 cut, 90 degree cuts, and 90 degree crossover cuts. I did this in our volleyball female national team. They cannot do it, so it takes some time, and they probably that's not good for the sport. I'm going to skip this video. Okay, I had 1 minute left, so I'm going pretty fast on this. So the paradigm that we work, they propose, a lot of researcher group propose, they will propose that when we do return sport, maybe we can add, besides not the motor performance, we should look at the movement quality and then cognitive loadings. So I will go, and then sport-specific test, for example, agility test in running curve rather than going linear, because the football is doing the linear. And then this is probably my last slide. So when we do the knee biometric chain during dual task, for example, we do the drop landing, and then you do the stroke tag. Stroke tag is mean that they just jump during the different, and you can help later. And then they found out the kinematics, and then kinetics is different between the dual task and single task. So that's one of the things that maybe can add on. So neurocognitive progression, for example, reactive battery may be added. So here is some example. For example, forward hopping test. Rather than just do hop, maybe just put the light on and say this is a go green, the red light is going, something like that. Okay, so my take-home message will be use a proper test battery, serial evaluation as the progression occurs, neuromuscular control, power hop, battery test, agility, and cutting test. Single leg vertical jump is probably better for the marker for knee and then single leg hop for return sport. Cognitive loading or reactive decision making should be added in the testing as well. And then later on, the ecological study, for example, game simulation, fatigue after game simulation may be added on or sport-specific agility tests, such as a running curve like that. Thank you very much for your attention. I get to watch the